My co-writer, Patrick Pianezza, was a real paramedic for 12 years, and he had very strong opinions, but it was good. I mean, it was really important to me that it would be accurate. He would usually train the actors on how everything worked, but still, you'd get into it, and we'd have to all practice and get the rhythm and figure out where everybody's going, that it made medical sense. But yeah, I mean, we always hope that any paramedic who saw it could say, like, oh my God, they got it right.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, a paramedic is tasked with training his eager but inexperienced replacement in director Christopher Leone's action comedy, Code 3. The film tells the story of Randy, a burnt-out paramedic who is about to resign. While training his replacement on his last 24-hour shift, their routine night quickly spirals into a chaotic citywide odyssey as they race from one emergency to the next. In addition to Code 3, Leone's other directorial credits include the feature film Parallels and episodes of the series Bite Size Horror, Suit Up, and Bar Karma. Following a screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Leone spoke with director Etan Cohen about filming Code 3. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
Well, hey. So I just want to, say for all of us, the movie's great.
Thanks, man.
Great to watch. So congratulations.
Thank you.
So the first thing I wanted to say is I think part of what made it great and interesting is to see that kind of world and from a perspective that you never get to see. So I just wanted to know what drew you to that. Why was this the next movie you were going to do?
Well, it started because my friend Paul, who's here tonight, had given me his brother's script. That was just there was no story. It was just his brother was a real paramedic, Patrick, and he'd written all these things about what being a paramedic was like, and that was mind-blowing to me because it was not at all what I thought. So we just started working on the script, and I've done a lot of science fiction, and in a weird way, it reminded me of science fiction in the sense that it's a totally other universe that none of us know, and it has its own rules and its own systems. So it obsessed me. But I mean, it took us I think I read the first draft in 2010 to give you an idea of how long this took.
So when you talk about a world that we haven't seen, I thought one of the really compelling themes, I hope I'm reading this right, that you had in there was sort of being underappreciated, which I saw when you showed the salaries on screen.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's it. I mean, none of us know the job. They get paid nothing. And so, it was just totally fascinating. And, the more you delve into it, I mean, as I talked with Patrick, he would tell me things. And so he would say, well, nobody dies in the ambulance. So that's, and I'd go, well, what do you mean nobody dies in the ambulance? And he'd go, well, no one ever dies in the ambulance. And I would say, oh, people must die in the ambulance all the time. And he was like, no, it's not allowed. So that would just come up in conversation. And I'd say, well, that has to go in the movie. And so that's kind of, I don't know. That's sort of, like I said, I just became obsessed with that stuff.
Those details are amazing. And actually, when I saw the movie too, I wanted to know, I'd sort of answer that a little bit. What was your research process like?
Mainly Patrick. Before we shot the movie, we went down to South Central, it was LA County Fire Department 14. We've actually fictionalized the EMS service here a little bit to match what Patrick's experience was, because he'd been EMS in mostly, I think, South Carolina, but a lot of places. Los Angeles has a very specific system, but we went on a ride along with fire department and EMS. And that was really enlightening. I mean, just the feeling of walking into people's houses who we're not expecting you, and it's not been cleaned up for company. It's rattling, but those guys do it every night, all the time. It's pretty crazy.
You appreciate the once you see the movie. It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I think we just take we take paramedics for granted. You dial 911 and it's, by the time you dial 911, that's your last resort, right? You've tried everything else. It's not working. So it's like, all right, well, I better call 911. And we just trust these people to show up and take care of us,
Okay, so one of the things I thought was amazing and unique to this, the production design and the prosthetics and all the gore, I was watching and thinking like, this belongs in a horror movie. So what was that process like? Who did you work with for all those kinds of effects?
So that was actually mainly Scotia Boyd was head of makeup and prosthetics. But yeah, we looked at dummies with skull cavities that were ripped open, and I remember she kind of the joke, but to make brains, she just made it out of bananas. I mean, it's like making a film like you're 12 years old, Yeah, so it was just, kind of scene by scene and, a lot of shoestring kind of budget. But yeah, it was honestly, it's like, I think the real job is way grosser and we cut a lot of it back. We cut back puke and blood. And so we tried to balance it, like give you a taste of what it's really like without freaking the audience out too much.
If that's just a taste.
Yeah, no. It could have been worse.
So I think, in movies of this nature that deal with a very specific kind of job, where people who are in that field probably tend to be very analytical and very critical when they see the movie about if you've gotten it right. So I was going to ask, have you spoken to paramedics, to doctors? What was that like?
Well, so the first thing was my co-writer, Patrick Pianezza, who was a real paramedic for 12 years. I brought him on as the medical technician. So he was there every day. He's actually in the movie a few times. Like he actually jumps in as a paramedic. But I relied on him so much. Because you'd be shocked at just how every little thing, like, well, do you move the IV this way, that way? And he had very strong opinions, but it was good. It was really important to me that it would be accurate. But that takes time, right? And like you get things wrong and then, but accurate both, all the technical stuff, all the details, but even the procedure. And so a lot of the scenes, it took a little while. Like we would try to, he would usually train the actors before, like kind of in the morning while we were setting up, train them on how everything worked. But still, you'd get into it and we'd have to all practice and get the rhythm and figure out where everybody's going, that it made medical sense. But yeah, I'm really glad. I'm glad about it. And, we always hope that any paramedic who saw it could say like, oh my God, they got it right.
Okay, so I now have a surprise question about male nudity.
Shoot.
Maybe it doesn't surprise you at all. So you've got some frontal nudity. This is my question because I've dealt with it on movies before, probably you have too. When you have frontal nudity in content like that, what kind of negotiation was it with the MPA over ratings?
It wasn't actually, I think we knew we were an R.
Yeah.
So, and it's pretty brief nudity. So yeah, it never came up, like there was no negotiation. It was just like, all right, yeah, that's an R. But it was, once we're talking about a guy who's half naked, it's like, well, he has to be half naked. I can't like be a prude about it, even though, you're making this actor do it. But man, Michael, he was totally game. Like he was so funny. So it worked out. And like I said, you really just have to, just suggest it. You don't have to, dwell on it.
You did tastefully.
That was as tastefully as it could be done. Yeah.
Sorry. So it's obviously a lot of comedy in the movie. I don't know if you'd classify it as a dark comedy.
Yeah. It's definitely a comedy. And it's got this dramatic part, but I don't think the only thing about dark comedy is I always suggest it's got more of a sinister sort of outlook, and I don't think this does, although it's got sometimes maybe a bleak outlook. So, you could call it dark. I don't think of it as dark exactly, but yes, I understand it's sort of gritty and messed up, but funny.
I laughed. But one of the questions I had to you about comedy is I think a lot of times you have funny material, and then you finally go to screen it, and there's things that you imagine playing as funny which don't, and then on a positive side, things that you thought were straight lines that are big laughs. So did you have...
Yes. Yeah. Every time. And audiences are different too. Like I love like the part where the homeless guy who just can't die, and Rain keeps reviving him. And then when he's eating the hamburger and sees him, that part always made me laugh really hard. But then there's like, I think we laughed at that tonight, but like there's other crowds that don't give that one as big of a laugh. And to me, that's like the funniest thing. And it's also, I think at that point you kind of need to sort of, pull out of the nosedive a little bit. But yes, no, it's constant, and that's like fascinating to me. But yes, the things that I think are the funniest things, I'm just the one in the back, like snickering, and like no one else will laugh at.
Okay, so I saw you co-wrote the script with your writer. So what was that like? Where did the idea come from? What was that process like for you guys?
Well, so the original script really didn't have a story, right? So it was like Patrick had just sort of opened up his veins and put all these different experiences on paper, but the fact that he saw it as a comedy was mind-blowing to me, because I was like, wow, really? But for me, the idea that comedy told the truth was so interesting that I actually kind of got under the skin of it. And I also thought that, well, this is a way to kind of sneak up on the audience, that like you actually start off like high energy, and the opening scene with the heroin addict, I always thought it, so I was like the James Bond sequence where like, oh, it's the end of their previous adventure, and it's just kind of chaos and crazy. And it sets this kind of tone of high energy and funny and gross, but that, as the movie goes on, it kind of keeps getting emotional weight. But I didn't want to add I knew we had to add a story, and we came up with the idea of it was Randy's last shift. But I was trying to think of movies where I didn't want to add a plot. Like I didn't want to add like, well, now they're pulling a diamond heist or whatever. I wanted it to be, what was so fascinating was the job, just going on call after call. And so I was trying to think of what movie would be like that. And it occurred to me, oh, it's war movies, right? So it's Full Metal Jacket and Hurt Locker I stole a lot from. I mean, like The Ticking Clock is all Hurt Locker. And just really the basic suspense of Hurt Locker being like, is the guy going to escape his shift before escape his tour before he blows himself up? And we were trying to kind of recreate the same thing here. Would Rain escape this job before it breaks him? And so that seemed to pull the movie together. And then just by talking with Patrick, we sort of discovered the fourth wall breaking, because he would just explain things. And at some point you're like, I'm just going to have Rain just turn the camera and explain it, and it just made more sense. But those three things together made it, felt like a unique tone to me.
So the idea was something you guys came up with together, or he brought you the idea? Oh,
sorry. No, Paul had made Patrick write a script, and Patrick had just written it. And then so Paul came to me and said, hey, do you want to read my brother's script? And I said, not really, no. Like, why would I want that? But then he said, no, you'd like it's a comedy about paramedics. And then that's what kind of got me hooked. And like the fact that, yes, a real paramedic had like really mind-blowing, strange things to say. I mean, to this day, is still fascinating.
I'm glad you changed your mind. So you were talking about sort of the tone, and one of the things I thought was great about the movie is you had a Rainn Wilson in there that I never saw.
Oh, that's
he was like
cool.
An alpha, a badass, version of himself that you'd never seen. So what was that casting process like?
Well, so Rainn was the first one in. And so I'd been a fan of Rainn's even before The Office, and I loved him in The Office. But I remember he was on 6 Feet Under, and I was fascinated by him there. And I'd gone to see Super, and I love Super. And like, he does things in Super that are so crazy, like really intense and really bold. I remember being kind of stunned. And of course, like I said, he's fascinating in The Office because he brings this sort of weird danger to the part, I think. It's like everyone knows the character. But anyway, so when he was interested, I was like, that was perfect. And he was really good about pushing the story forward. Like he was really good about thinking about how to make it kind of deeper and funnier. And so the script really kind of grew around him. And then I think really early, I was like, who'd be good with Rainn is Lil Rel. And because I'd seen Get Out, and he was so funny in that. And Rel wanted to do it. I think Rel wanted to work with Rainn. And my gut was that would be a good duo. And it turned out to be right. And then, like I said, we just sort of kept building it from there. And like I said, Amy came in as like kind of the rudder of the whole thing and had this deceptively hard part, I think. Because if she's too, she had to be naive, but also smart, but tough, but not annoying. And she just masterfully had it. So And Rel too, like I said, seeing him, like he's so funny, but then goes to a really dark place, and some of the scenes are really dramatic. So it just kind of naturally, organically found a way. But like I said, I'm very lucky that I got this amazing cast of incredibly funny people that make me look funny, because it's, but they were great. It was dream cast.
So did he come in with an idea of how to play the character? Did you get him there, or did you negotiate it with him?
I think we talked about it early on, and I think it was sort of finding the voice. But I think we discussed, like, just playing it straight, just playing it for the stress, and everything else was kind of it was most natural, but also the funniest to me. Like the idea that as he gets more stressed out, that he gets funnier, or was interesting to me. But like I said, I also knew I knew he had the total dramatic chops. But yeah, it's interesting. I think maybe people haven't seen it all together, even though I think Rain's done a ton of stuff. I think you can see it in pieces, but maybe this assembles it.
I was curious, because you have an animation background, how much you used storyboards for your action sequences.
I did, but they're just my own like little doodles. But like, it just helps me think through. Actually, it really helps me think through the blocking almost more than anything. I doodled almost the entire movie, just as like stick figures. But yeah, I mean, because as an animator, I was a 3D animator, so drawing didn't really apply.
That's an unfair advantage.
Yeah. But like I said, it helped me, and I think having a 3D background helps you think through. And I did a lot of previs, so I figured out how to shoot stuff for other directors. But the overall theory of the movie was that the camera would be the fourth paramedic, so that a lot of camera decisions were based on that. And again, sketching it out, going like for instance, in the beginning, I'm fascinated by point of view, but in the beginning sequence, I wanted the camera to feel as much like Jolo, the newbie in the beginning. So like when the girl sits up and pukes, that it pukes on us, like it's puking right at us. And so that forcing you to be just always in that position, and forcing you to be in the back of the truck with them, or hopping out of the back of the truck was fun. But anyway, that's why drawing it helped me think it out. So
I was curious about, especially with comedy, not always where often rehearsal is such an important part of getting ready for the movie. What was your process like in rehearsal, if you had one?
We didn't really have enough time to rehearse that much. We did prep all the actors we did some training with Patrick. But that was fantastic, because it was a little bit of like starting to be like team building, and seeing Patrick at work was kind of mind blowing. But yeah, I mean, mostly, like I said, I tended to like to talk about it and think about it, but but that was it. Yeah, we didn't honestly just didn't have time to rehearse.
So if you didn't have time, sort of in the prep part of rehearsal, would you say your script stuck the way it was on the page when you finally got to shooting?
Well, I actually like ad-libbing. I mean, it's more important to me that it's natural than it is word for word. So, and again, you have these really incredibly funny actors. So I think if you looked at the script, most of the scenes would be pretty close, at least in structure. But then, occasionally the actors just put it in their own voice, and that's fine. But then there's scenes like the Subway sandwich scene, where like that is what it was written, the basis of it, but they took it like way farther. But that I don't usually break when we're shooting. I think I'm just too nervous or just too concentrating. But once in a while, like that scene had me crying off camera. But yeah, I guess that's.
So then, just to back up to takes, with the comedy too, like how many takes would you do, at least as it was written?
The first few takes, I don't really direct, because I don't want to, besides the basic blocking and stuff, because I usually find that I want to get the actors take before I start infecting it, and then hopefully then I'm just sort of like just throwing like, oh, what if you do this? Or I'm just kind of reacting to what they did. I don't know, maybe 5 or 6, I think, like not enough to get through it and feel like, okay, I have some options, but that's usually about, I think I'm either I'm literally out of time, or I'm like, all right, that's all my ideas. Yeah.
And So, but what happens so often with comedy is you get your takes, what you need for the story, and then you might try to bend things for comedy, especially with improv artists like that. Was that something you did?
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I think we would go farther and farther off, as the takes went on. But yeah, like I said, it depends on the scene. Obviously, the more medically heavy it is, obviously less you do. But yeah, but like I said, ultimately, I think it's close and like I said, close in structure to the script. But yeah, no, I like to be surprised. And like I said, there's a line, Rob Riggle, who's like so funny, even though he's pretty dramatic in this. The last line of his scene as a surgeon, he says, now I have to get back to never being done. Like, I didn't write that one. He just said that at the end of the scene. Every review, just about every review quotes that line. It's like, that's not one of mine.
How dare he?
Yeah, I know. But to me, like, great. I'll take everything, But yeah, no. So I like what happens when you kind of let go.
So you didn't really find yourself sort of formally rewriting as you were shooting? No.
I mean, like almost up to the day we were. I mean, actually, that scene I just mentioned was like put in just a few days before the shoot. But no. I think once we were rolling, I didn't want to mess with it anymore.
So you had a difficult needle to thread in terms of the tone. Felt like to me. So how did you arrive there when you were first reading the script?
I think tone to me is maybe the most interesting thing. Like it's actually kind of the North Star. So I think from the beginning, I think the things that I felt when reading like Patrick's first draft of feeling like this kind of total surprise. And again, this sort of like going through the looking glass and being in this world I'd never been in. And then talking to Patrick and hearing things that were just like really strange sometimes and peculiar, and then sometimes like devastating. So I wanted all of it because that seemed like that was the job, that like a lot of the job is driving around and just shooting the shit and laughing together. And then, trying to sneak in, like there was a drive-in movie theater they used to go to. So they had time to kill. They could like watch the drive-in, like on the, the top of the hill. And that was fascinating, like almost like, messing around with your high school friends or something when you had nothing to do because there were no calls. And then suddenly like this literal life or death situation that was, and I think a lot of those guys do like that, the adrenaline of that, But yeah, but the tone, but it just, again, it's sort of, that just comes out of what the job really is and why I think emotionally it becomes so broad. Like the spectrum is so broad because it, just by kind of telling the truth of it, I think you discover things and discover, like I said, the awful things that he's been through that you don't really tell, that a paramedic maybe doesn't tell a lot of people. Yeah.
Okay, don't want to put you on the spot, but one thing I wanted to ask was, what was the toughest part of this production, or things that kind of knocked you off?
Oh man, the freeway, there's a few tough days. Every day, both the car crash and the freeway crash, both of those were very tough days because we had a lot to do. And, I mean, it was amazing that we could close down a freeway, but then, we had an entire crash. So I think we got there like 3 a.m. or something and started setting up. And once the light started coming up, we were shooting and we went until the light was gone. And that was it. Like that was what we got, So, and that was just one day. So I think it was just, I think the thing, as like you're up against a clock every day, and especially when the clock's a tough one. But that was the biggest challenge. I think was always those days.
What it looked like to me when I was watching it was continuity must have been so hard.
Yes. Well, also we shot in the spring of 23, which is now a while ago. It was the worst rain I think I'd ever seen here. And so the rain in every scene is different. And it was infuriating because it was like, we're shooting in Los Angeles. This should not be a problem. But I mean, I think that, the scene actually with Johnny Chicago, the half naked guy, it was pouring down rain. And so the whole ambulance is covered with tents and stuff. So that was a tough one. And I wanted shots like across the street. I wanted all these kind of Mad Max shots. I couldn't get them because everything was, so Yeah. Continuity was rough.
And to me, I don't know if this was an issue for you. To me, one of the toughest things to shoot is always stunts because you just don't get any takes.
Yeah.
Was that something you ran into?
A few times, yeah, but we didn't. The stunts were, we got away with it. We didn't have anything too dangerous. Actually, the worst stunts were actually like the guy who played the car accident victim was just in the car and in the stretcher for hours and hours and hours. So in a way, what you're actually paying for was not the danger, but paying for this like resilience of this guy to be patient with all the medical stuff all day. And then the fight, I think, with Mr. President, there were a few stunts in that. But yeah, no, we did okay, actually, on that part.
And it felt to me like it was one of the things, the challenges that might go with your tone is the music, the score, and a producer I used to work with used to say, that's the time when the movie gets better.
Yeah.
But it seemed like a challenge to you.
Yeah, music and sound design in general. But yeah, music. My parents were music teachers, so I grew up with a lot of music, and I'm fascinated by it. And the composer Max Eberl really did I think a remarkable job. But yes, it was, but also trying to find the tone and trying to find not hit, especially the emotional parts, not hit it on the head. I think most of the emotional parts we sort of creep in after. But then, I think the last sequence with Mom is pretty rousing. So there's scenes that are kind of haunting, and all of the scenes with all the fourth wall breaks. Each one of those were like a unique piece, but he would use samples of real medical instruments. So it was like this kind of collage of beeps and scalpels dropping and stuff. And each one of those was amazing, and so I loved all that stuff. So it was really creative and. But I thought captured the vibe and seemed to knit all the different tones together. But sound design too, and all throughout, like keeping this constant kind of hum of activity, the radio going, and then with the planes at the end, sort of feeling this cycle of noise to hopefully kind of make you agitated. But that was they did a tremendous job, I thought.
So I want to ask you too, what was your favorite sequence that was sort of the most satisfying to put out there?
Well, the Mr. President sequence was kind of a knockout. It was also interesting. I mean, both Lil Rel Howery and Rafael Castillo really, took it really hard. Took it dead seriously. But, we were just in a little east of downtown and just this, this apartment building. I think we were only supposed to be there till midnight, and I think we went to 2. Nobody stopped us. And yeah, we're making noise, and we're just having all this chaos and cop cars and ambulances. And so it was really controlled chaos. But the editor's Jay Friedkin, is pretty much his first edit. I think we trimmed the tails a little bit, but it really it just remarkably came together, and it was affecting. So I'm really proud of that. Although so much of that was letting everybody do their job. Like I said, letting the actors do it, letting Jay do it. And then the end sequence I really like with the planes coming overhead. Part of that was once we shot in LA, and once you're shooting in LA, a lot of the decision was well, what LA is it? Is it downtown? Is it the Valley? And we decided the hospital I liked was in Hawthorne, and there were planes going overhead all the time. So it's right in the path of LAX. And then at some point I thought, well, maybe we should incorporate these planes into the ending, because I wanted the ending to have more of a nerve-wracking thing. And Paul Pianezza, Patrick's brother, since we both came out of visual effects, he kind of managed the visual effects. And so just really on a shoestring kind of managed to add these planes that are just, right overhead. So I liked how that came together.
So I think one of the most painful parts of editing, and one of the most important, is when there's a sequence that you love, that you understand for the first time. You can't let it wag the dog in the movie. Was there anything like that you had to sacrifice? There's
a bunch of scenes that are gone. One that I really think we should put back in the movie, but a bunch of them, there's a scene where they go to a pretty fancy party, basically, and it was a funny scene, but it kind of came near the end, and it was actually, all our kind of emotional weight was dissipating. And so even though on the page it made sense because it was right after the Mr. President scene, and you felt how they're all rattled and now dealing with all these rich assholes who are, treating them like the help, and like Rain's getting mad, and it was like a funny contrast because that was a big part of the job, was like going from something dead serious to something trivial or pointless. But in the movie it didn't work, and so I was sorry to see that go, but it made sense for the big picture. But yeah, there's a lot of little pieces that I miss,
Great. I thought you did a great criticism of health insurance. Was that something important to you that you wanted to get out there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that was Patrick's own experience with the real thing. And again, I think the more we talked about what it means to be a paramedic, that you'd say, well, why is everybody burnt out? And then you'd start to get into, well, they don't get paid very much, and the budgets are very small. Like, well, why is that? And I think the more you expand out into it, the more you discover just how broken the health system is. And it just became a natural part of telling what it means to be a paramedic.
Well, that was very satisfying because I think part of the movie is you really exposed a lot of really important parts of health insurance and paramedics that I don't think anyone knows about going into this movie.
I didn't either.
Well, thank you.
No, thank you, man. This is cool.
Congratulations again.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.